FYP are to cultivate students' academic, presentation, and research communication skills, and to train, educate, and groom the participants with essential skills of presentation and communications. To all contestants, you are required to stay until the end of these sessions. I will provide the survey form as well as attendance form for you to fill in. To begin our sessions, I would like to invite our General Chair of IEEE 5-minute FYP to give welcoming speech. Without further ado, may I present you Dr. Haroon Rashid to give the welcoming speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Am I audible? Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. Those of you joining from north to west, east to west, and north to south of Malaysia. Once again, welcome from my side to second IEEE 5 minutes final year project competition 2021. I am Haroon Rashid. I'm the chair of IEEE Young Professionals Malaysia, as well as I am the general chair of this competition. And it's my privilege to welcome all of you to this special and our mega event that we designed specially for undergraduate students. So in this session, I will just very quickly give you a very quick overview, and before we will proceed with our first grooming workshop with our speaker, Dr. Magaret. So over this 1 month period that is starting from today, we will be meeting up for final on 18 December. So until that time, all the participants, they have a time to refresh themselves, to learn a lot of things from our speakers. You will be attending 3 grooming workshops and 1 coaching session. In that coaching session, you will be trained in a very small group by the trained professionals. So basically, the purpose of this event is to train the speaker, to train the students that they are able to communicate their final year project to non-technical audience in just 5 minutes using a simple static slide. What I mean simple static slide, you see behind me this virtual background like one slide. So in this one slide, everything, whatever is there, you just put it in one slide and you explain the whole idea within 5 minutes to non-technical audience. For example, your grandfather or your grandmother who don't even have a single touch about your technical things, technical terms, how you are going to explain your things to them, how you will explain your project to them. That is what you are going to learn throughout this 1 month from our speakers. They are all very well experienced. They are established speakers. They are qualified. They have received several awards. So I will not take further time. I'll be meeting you on and off at several occasions. So without further ado, I will hand over the session back to Dr. Osman so that he introduce our first speaker today, and you learn all the tips, tricks from them. And I'm sure it is going to be very useful. And don't forget to give your feedback so that we can improve things for you and we can bring the best for you. So with this, I welcome you and I officially announce the opening of second IEEE 5 minutes final year project competition 2021. Back to Dr. Osman.
Thank you, Dr. Haroon Rashid, for the welcoming speech. Now, it is the time that we are waiting for. We have our distinguished speaker, technologist Dr. Magaret Sivapragasam, to give us talk. Before that, I would like to share the bibliography of our speaker today. Technologist Dr. Magaret Sivapragasam is an affiliate member of the ASM Young Scientist Network. She's currently served in the Science Communication Working Group as well as a sub-editor in the SD.my e-magazine committee. She was awarded the Science Finder Cost Fusion Leader by American Chemical Society in 2017 and went on being placed on the periodic table of younger chemists by IEEEYP, representing the element ytterbium in 2019. She is honored with the title Super Female by Female Magazine, where she was selected as the top 45 women in Malaysia and also backed herself to Kotek Shikan Award in 2020. She is the founding member of the Facebook group Sembang Science, where they aims to make science conversational. Magaret is a professional technologist and currently serves as a senior lecturer and head of school at Quest International University. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite technologist Dr. Magaret Sivapragasam to give her talk. Now the stage is yours, Dr. Magaret.
Thank you, Dr. Osman. Good evening, everyone. I do realize my name can be a mouthful, but you did a good job in pronouncing my father's name especially. Yeah, so thank you again for that. Just give me a minute before I share my slides, yeah, Dr. Osman? Okay, so again, good evening. Literally from the other side, I am currently in Ipoh, Perak. For those who know Quest International University, we are a private university in Ipoh, Perak. So I will just take Adele's quote by saying hello from the other side. And I also have included a QR code of my, basically a little brief of my resume and who I am, my research profile and all the groups that I'm affiliated with as per what was read by Dr. Osman earlier just now. So I have included the QR code. If you want to scan it on your phone or your gadgets, you may do so, but I'm also going to include it at the end of the session. I'm going to keep the session very light and very conversational. As per science communication, we don't have something which is cast in stone, meaning to say, I cannot give you tips which are 100% and tell you that if you follow A, B, and C, and D, you're going to nail that. You know, so science communication is a very fluid field, and you need something which is based on your own experience and tailor whatever I am going to share today based on my experience in order to fit your perspective and your field of scope. So please, again, bear in mind that please, I would like to keep it conversational. So if you like to chat, if you like to type in some things in the chat box, or if you want to unmute your mic, please kindly go ahead and do so, right? So yes, my topic of today's session would be to make science talk. Before that, I would like to thank IEEE 5-minute thesis and also Dr. Yasmin for generously inviting me for today's session. When Dr. Yasmin approached me to ask me what would my session be titled, I told her, let's learn how to make science talk. So we're going to start with that, how to make science talk. And I hope at the end of this hour's session, you'd be able to make your own science talk. So again, we're going to begin with this very important quote right here by Anne Rowe in 1953. Allow me to just read this. Nothing in science has any value to society if it's not communicated. And scientists are beginning to learn their social obligations. So let me tell you who is Anne Rowe. Anne Rowe is a clinical psychologist. In 1953, she wrote a book called The Making of a Scientist. And that book talks about how factors, how environmental factors or any other factors govern the choices of someone's career later on. And she specifically talked about how does one go about to be a scientist? What are the factors that influence someone to be a successful scientist? Yeah, so this book was published in 1953. And if you think science communication is a new field, it is not, because in 1953, Anne Rowe already mentioned very, very powerful words and strong words such as social obligations. For those of you who understand BM, Bahasa Melayu, obligation tends to mean patuh. And this would mean your obligation to your parents, your obligation to your country, and even your social obligation. You patuh kepada ibu bapa, patuh kepada raja dan negara. And you would know that patuh is a very, very strong word, meaning you have to give back, you have to obey, you have to honor your parents, you have to honor your country. And it's very surprising why an author would use such a strong word, such as obligation, in order to tell us the meaning on why we should communicate science. So even back in the day, people are already started to talk. No matter what work you do in the lab, no matter how long of a PhD or how long of a master's you're doing in the lab, I am here to tell you that is of completely no use if you're not going to communicate what you have done in the lab. No doubt, you might tell me that, yes, I have published 100 papers during my PhD, or I have published 200 papers during my master's, and all of them have impact factors that go up to 20, that go up to 30. I've even got a paper in Nature. But where does this pool of research, or who reads this? Fortunately, the people who are going to read it is, for example, if I am doing research on wastewater, and if I'm going to go on a portal to find research on wastewater, I am going to find your research and I'm going to read the research, meaning that your research paper that you published is only going to reach another fellow scientist. How about disseminating knowledge, like what Dr. Osman mentioned just now, the ability to talk to a 5-year-old, or the ability to talk to your neighbor or your grandmother or your grandfather. And I think you all would particularly agree with me, as now the dawn of our vaccination is taking place. And I'm sure you have seen a lot of these WhatsApp groups that go on these Machi and Pachi WhatsApp groups that states all of this really, really funny non-science facts about the disadvantages of vaccines. And the Academy of Science and also Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia is doing a tremendous job in order for us to debunk those myths. And they come up with infographics, they come up with little pocket messages, and those, my friends, are a form of science communication. To be able to translate all that fancy research that went on in the labs that produced this vaccine, and to deliver this information on why vaccines are safe to your parents, to your neighbors, to your nieces, to your nephews. And science communication goes by a lot of different terms in different parts of the world. It is sometimes known as science popularization. Sometimes it is known as public understanding of science, social appropriation of science and technology. And what is it actually by definition? It is a process of distilling technical information. All of you, a majority of you, are engineers, I presume, with other people as well in other different backgrounds of science. And you know, distillation is a process of fractionation, is a process of purification, which also translates to chunking down messages into small pocket-sized bits in order for us to make it understandable to people who necessarily are not in the same field as you are, right? And this also, what it does is it bridges the gap between scientists, people like us, people like all of you, all 62 of you here today, and also the lay people. People who are lay people, by this I mean not people who don't understand knowledge, but rather people who are not in the science field, an accountant, perhaps a banker, an economist, a finance, anybody who does something which is not in the field of science, yeah? So we're going to go to what will happen. So many times I have faced this when I go about and tell people, let me talk to you about the research, and they go like, oh, please, no. They close their ears and they say, I don't want to hear you. I know you're going to be so boring, and I know you're going to tell me a bunch of stuff which I'm not going to understand, like this little comic that you see here. And other times, scientists talk apples, and the public hear orange. No doubt they are in the same clan, fruits, but they are totally different fruits. What this picture tells you that whatever the scientist is talking, whatever the scientist is trying to deliver, the public takes it in a complete different way. Why this happens? This happens because the communication was not effective. In order for us to have effective communication, it must be two, meaning that I am giving you information. I am the speaker. You are the listener. You are taking in my information, digesting it, and trying to translate what I'm saying. If you do not understand what I'm saying, you are not able to take it and digest it. And that is where the barrier lies. And we are here today, or I am here today with you to discuss some ways how we can break that barrier, how we can make everybody understand. If we are putting out apples, people will understand apples as well. So I have some questions for you here. Sorry, right. The first question is, if you look at this list of, I would say, chemicals here, I want you to guess in the chat box, what do you think this is? Is this the list of chemicals or ingredients, as I may put it, for a banana, for a granola bar, or for shampoo? Would you want to type in your answers in the chat box and we would see who is right and who is wrong? We have a B, right? We have an A, we have A, C, B. Okay. Looks like we have a mix of answers, A, B, and C. Too much water for granola. Good one, good one. We'll have a really soggy granola, would we? Okay. Okay. I could see that a majority of you said A. All right. This is a phenomenon that has been going on for a bit. Chemophobia. I don't know whether you have heard it. If you're not, ta-da, this is a new word for today. Chemophobia, chemophobia. The phobia of all, or like how you have phobias of other things, the phobia of chemistry or chemical compounds. And if you look at a lot of advertisement nowadays, or even if you pick up a bottle of shampoo or anything, if you go to the store and if you look at this fancy labels, you have things of, you would see things like this that are stuck on labels in order to make it attractive. But I am here to tell you that I'm sure you all know as well, for the ones who chose the answers above, you would know that everything in the world is made up of chemical compounds, like the orange that I'm holding here. If you synthesize ascorbic acid or vitamin C, which is commonly known, in the lab, and if you extract ascorbic acid / vitamin C from this orange that I'm holding now, you would realize that the compound is the same. The chemical properties of both the materials, the both synthesized materials, the synthesized in the lab and extracted from the orange would be the same. And to burst your bubble, all of the ingredients listed here are the ingredients for a banana. Now you would look and say that, whoa, I'm eating so much of chemicals. I thought it was just a regular banana. Isn't a banana supposed to be free of chemicals? No, because in a banana, you have so many compounds, such as you would see the same compounds, in fact, in a shampoo bottle. You would see the same compounds in a granola bar. The difference is the where and the source of where the chemicals come from. Doesn't mean that the ones that are extracted or taken from an orange and the one that are synthesized in the lab is any less or more dangerous. It is the same chemistry. So this is one example of how information can be mistranslated and misunderstood, even by marketing agencies that write things down like chemical-free snack or free of chemical granola bar. So now you would know that everything in the world is made up of chemical compounds. Everything in the world is in fact chemistry. Even this humble orange, or the answer for that question, a banana. Moving on, I would like to see how many of you know who is the cast of picture number 1. Would you type in your answers, please? Who are the people? Yes, we have an answer, right? Big Bang Theory, Big Bang Theory. Sheldon, good one, my favorite. Right? Do you have any other answers coming? Mini Big Bang, okay? Mini Bang Theory. So, right, all of you are right. In fact, this is the cast of Big Bang Theory, a TV series which ran for 12 seasons. My favorite, I am sure it must be a lot of your favorite as well. Do you think this show was a form of science communication? If I ask you this question, is Big Bang Theory an example of science communication? What would your answer be? You type it in the chat box. Is Big Bang Theory the show? Right? You have yes, kinda, in a fun and comedic way. Yes, all right. Okay, we have a lot of people saying yes, yep, okay. In fact, all of you are correct by saying that. Why do you say yes? This show was targeted to be, I would say, a comedy. It had very comical elements to it, as well as some very important pocket-sized information. But what the directors did was they transferred science and they translated science into something everybody could understand. And this was done through the action, the funny actions of Penny, or funny actions of Sheldon, when they talk about something so big as like the cosmic theory or a constellation, or even the Big Bang Theory itself. So yes, this is a form of science communication, and science communication need not only to be writing. It could be pocket-sized informations like an infographic, even something you see around here. A series, a comic series, a movie, another example, something that could deliver science in an understandable and approachable way to the mass public. Number 2, we have a picture of a teacher teaching on the blackboard. A very simple, relatable answer that all of you go through almost on a daily basis. You attend classes. Back 2 years ago, you would attend classes, physical classes, and you would have your lecturer write notes on the blackboard or whiteboard. Right now, you'll be doing something like what I'm doing right now, a virtual class, and you would still see the screen of your lecturer talking and writing on the board. What is your lecturer or your teacher doing is also a form of science communication. Why do I say so? It's because he or she is making information easily understandable to you. You are someone who have not acquired that information yet. So you could be labeled as layman because you don't know what is he going to teach yet. You don't know that piece of information yet. And he or she is going to try to chop down that complicated theory like the quantum theory or really something really complicated into small chunk of pieces for you to be able to digest that information. Picture 3 shows us a picture of yourself, what you'll be doing on the 18th of December, your 5-minute thesis competition, right? So this would be a picture of a boy or a man who is about to do his presentation. And in this case, this is also an example of science communication because you are going to explain your science to the general audience, the general virtual audience. And this audience could be along with people who are not in the engineering field, somebody who is in the biology field, another person could be in the chemistry field, and they may not have the capacity to understand what are you trying to explain. So in a month's time, you would learn through this series of grooming workshop that your host has graciously put together on how you would write a script, on how you tell effective storytelling. And why is this all important? Again, if you remember what we have said earlier, is that in order for us to have effective presentations, you need to make sure that the entire floor, the entire audience understands what you are trying to explain. Your mission of an effective presentation would not be accomplished if the people who are in your classroom only understand what you're trying to say. Your mission will be accomplished if your friend who is in the biology field, for example, comes up to you and say, "Hey, Ali, I really understood your presentation and you made it really easy and very conversational," right? So that would be your target, or that would be your objective of your presentation. With that, I'm not asking you to strike out all of the terms that you need to mention. What I usually do is, when I need to mention a term which I have to put on my slide, right? Dr. Osman mentioned just now how the format of your presentation would be: a background with a static slide and you presenting the slide. Sometimes you may come up to tell me that, oh, in chemistry or in biology or in engineering, you have a lot of technical terms that I must put on the slide. If not, I would not be able to explain myself. What I do is I usually still put those words, but those words are meant to be visual. Whatever's at the back of your slide is visual. What you are doing right now is presenting what is behind you. So you don't need, or you should not be reading what is behind you. Instead, you should be presenting the gist of what is behind you. And when you do that, for example, if you're working on some really complicated semiconductors that are used for phone chips, for example, what I would do is I would pick up my phone and I would say, everyone has a phone. Let me tell you what is inside the phone. And I would start with something like that in order to make my presentation more relatable. Because if you're going to start with a title that mentions 2-3 diode transmitter of blah, 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 blah in a motherboard of blah, 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 everybody's going to be shut off. And once you lose that interest, once you're not able to gauge that interaction with somebody on the other side of the screen, the people are not going to pay attention to you anymore. And that is the sad truth. In fact, science tells us that a human's attention span only lasts for about 3 to 4 minutes. And then we start wandering off. And that is the responsibility of the speaker to always sound upbeat, to always have, you could throw in some phrases, you could throw in a joke here and there to make sure your audience is continuing to listen to you. And why is this important? Why do you need to tell what went on in your FYP? You might say that, oh, it's just a degree project. I just did it for 6 months or so. Why is it important that my mother or father needs to know about it? It is important because every piece of science information that goes on in the lab, as Anne-Rose said, is your social obligation to be shared. And this would help people make more informed decisions. You may never know if you're presenting something on semiconductors and somebody in the biology field, or even one of your another lecturer who is not in the field of your study would think that, oh, this student that day did a study on this blah, 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 blah. Let me contact him further to see what are his thoughts about blah, 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 blah. And by this, you could make more, you could either foster more relationships. You could get PhD or master's opportunities. I know many of my students will speak to people like this, and people approach them and say, hey, your presentation was so interesting. What about wastewater are you doing? And then the students say that, oh, I'm doing this. Why? It's because the student made the presentation relatable. And when you do that, people are engaged. And this is really important also to make sure your research does not only stay in the lab. Your research is not only in the lab, and it's only not confined to how many journal publications you have written, your H index, your I-10 index, or your impact factor, if your neighbor beside you does not know about it. It is also important for government to make decisions related to regulations, science policies, and fundings. And this is really, really important for us to progress as a nation in order for us to upscale our science policy, in order for us to make more enforced regulations when it comes to the environment, when it comes to science laws. And another question you may ask me is that, how do I talk when this is my first time presenting? And I don't know how am I going to change the words I have on my slide, or I don't know how am I going to translate the complicated words that I have or the complicated chemical names that I have on my slide to an interesting presentation. For this, I'm going to tell you that I do not have an answer for this. In fact, conversations, including the ability to present, including the ability to engage, comes with a skill that needs to be practiced. I'm not saying that this is an impossible skill. I'm not saying this is an impossible task. It is a very, very doable task. One thing you could do is sit down with your lecturer and ask her, apart from this, how can I make this research relatable to what is going on to the world around me? If you're doing, example, something on wastewater, how do I relate it to the case of cholera, for example, we had in Kuala Lumpur a few weeks ago? If I'm doing something on solar cells, for example, how am I going to lead it to the COP conference that went on a while ago? How am I going to relate it to something that everybody knows? When you relate it to something everybody knows, they are going to be interested, and then you slowly reel them in, like how you would do with a fishing rod, into the dynamics of your presentation. I mentioned earlier, there's no single approach. Again, no recipe for success. All I can say is this comes with a lot of practice. This comes with a lot of effort of trying to make things more relatable. And also this comes with creativity. And this is something absolutely doable. Because every time when you go to a different venue, for example, if you go for a conference, or if you're doing a conference elsewhere, it could be an international conference, it could be at the venue of what we are doing, what is going to happen in a month, the 5-minute thesis, your audience is going to be diverse. And what I always encourage is, there is no harm in asking the organizer, may I know my target audience? By this, you do something called audience profiling. And what this gives you, it gives you an idea of who are the people who are coming or attending your presentation. Why you would do this is because when you see that there are people of different backgrounds, it will be easier for you to tailor your speech so that your speech could be effective and they could accept and understand what you're going to talk about. Always remember, a presentation is the avenue for an effective communication. Very simple. It all boils down to how effective your communication is. For effective communication to take place, you need a person who is speaking, for example, me, a person who is listening. And that listener should be able to understand, digest, and acknowledge what I'm trying to say. So remember, effective communication takes place when you profile your audience. And there is no harm in asking, may I know who is the target audience for this presentation? Please do not think that you're only a student and you dare not ask the organizer this. If you are afraid or are not brave enough to ask, you may always go through your supervisor. Target audience, or what is the audience profiling for the day of presentation, so I could tailor my speech effectively, right? So this is a very important tip that you could do for your upcoming presentations or presentations later on, even in international conferences. Okay, another thing we've covered depending on who your target audience is, another thing is to always know the format of your presentation. Dr. Osman mentioned just now that this would be 5 minutes. In many other places, we have something called 3 minutes. We also have something which is 60 seconds, your elevator pitches. Those are something that happens within less than a minute. You have something called a pecha kucha session. So you always need to know what is the format of the presentation so you can prepare accordingly. If you're stuck, again, if you're stuck with too many high-tech words, I know people of science have so many bombastic words that they use. Again, what I said, always make things relatable. And everything is relatable because every single research that you're doing is tentatively everything around us. If you're doing something about the quantum theory or something like that, related to the stars and moons in the sky. If you're doing something about wastewater, related to something which is out in the newspapers recently. If you're doing something on semiconductors, related to a microchip, related to your phone. I even had a presentation which I attended on semiconductors who spoke about hair dryers being malfunctioned, and then she narrowed it down into malfunction of chipboards, yeah, or motors. So you can relate it to things which people use and see every day, so they may be hooked onto your presentation. Make it conversational. Always start by asking questions. Always start with a hook. Always start with an opening line that people would want to listen to you. Again, like what I said, you have only a few seconds for people to form an impression about you. And again, as how neutral this sounds, first impressions, most of the time, are the only lasting impressions, especially when we're doing things virtually. Right? So if you're going to come online and if you're going to, sit sluggish and you're going to do this and you're just going to look so bored and you're going to tell, all right, everybody, today my slide is going to talk about, if you're going to do this, nobody's going to want to listen to you. Everybody's going to think that, oh, it's another boring presentation. I'm going to start, playing on my phone. I'm going to chat with my friends. I'm going to watch a YouTube video for a while until this person is over. But if you come on screen and you say, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to my presentation today. Today, I am going to talk to you about the environment. Take a look around you. If you start something like this, if you put on a good vibe, people are going to want to watch you and say, hey, that girl is interesting. Although I don't know anything about the environment, I am going to want to listen to her because she has a good online energy. And that is what I mean by vibe. Always come on, even if it's a physical presentation or a virtual presentation like this, always come on with a good vibe. And you might think that, oh, virtual presentation, how can she know if I'm a good person or a bad person? Or how can she know if I'm happy or sad on that day? So always come up, sit upright, and then put a smile on your face and always have an upbeat attitude towards your presentation. Make sure that you really, really love your presentation and you want people to understand and acknowledge your presentation and you want them to ask you questions because you're so enthusiastic about your presentation. So if you come on screen with that attitude in mind, you would see things change. If you don't believe me, try it out for yourself on the 18th of December. Come on with a good positive vibe, and I would get feedback from Dr. Osman and Dr. Haroon and Dr. Yasmin on how all of you have performed. Yeah. Again, one more thing that I have, this is particularly something that I would want to share based on my experience, is the usage of social media when it comes to presenting for big things like this, big organizations like IEEE, big organizations like RCS or ACS or any other big organizations that you're a part of, right? So I did speak to Dr. Yasmin and she did provide me some of the social medias or the social media posts that you have put on. You have put on things on, on Instagram, you put it on Twitter, you put it on Facebook. And what you would do is things that, this is what I do in order for people or the crowd to kind of gather excitement about my presentation, is to always start a hashtag. And if the organizers have not done it for you, you can get in touch with a few friends and hashtag this as hashtag IEEEYP FMT or something like that, or hashtag grooming workshop, right? So You could get together with a couple of friends. You could start this hashtag, and then if it's put it up on social media. Again, I will talk to you in a little bit, the pros and cons about using social media for conferences, scientific conferences like this. So just to sum up a little bit about what we spoke just now, always avoid scientific jargon. Start your presentation clearly by mentioning the gap, the aim, and the objective of your presentation before moving straight into your introduction. And I see this many times when people present, they go straight directly into the introduction of the thesis. It is better and more understandable and more achievable, in fact, to the other person who is listening, if you start, but what is the problem you're trying to tackle, and then relate it to what is happening currently around you. And then what I mentioned just now, reel them in with your introduction and then go into the technical part of your presentation. Because you have a static background, always use more graphics, right? Always use more graphics. Make sure your graphics are big. Make sure they are colorful so that people will be directed to looking into it. And one small thing that you always find off the internet when it comes to science communication is that you will see things like the 5-year-old child proof. This means that you could practice your speech with a 5-year-old, 5 or 6-year-old actually, or a child, and see if she or he understands what you're trying to say. This could be also applicable to your grandmother or your grandfather. Try practicing your script with them. And if they, like kurut dahi and frown at you like that and say that, what are you talking about? Then you know your presentation is not effective. If they look at you and say that, oh, and then what happened? Oh, and then, oh, is this the big work you're doing in the lab with big eyes? Then you would know that what you're doing is exciting to even a 5-year-old student. Yeah. So try practicing that with somebody who is younger, need not to be 5 or 6, but I hope you get the gist of what I'm saying. Somebody who is younger, somebody who is not in the field, for them to see if they understand your presentation. And something that I would like to just to give fun food for thought is the proof of coffee. This is actually the origins of things like 5-minute, 3-minute, 2-minute, and all the MTs that you see. Typically, science or communicators feel for you to deliver an effective message or effective conversation, it should be while, or it should be during a duration that you have a mug of coffee. So if you're having coffee, you don't immediately gulp it down. If your coffee is hot, if it's just brewed, you would sip it. And typically, people take about 3 to 5 minutes to finish their coffee. And this is the origin on why competitions like 3MT and 5MT come into place, why they give little pocket-sized numbers to all these big competitions. You may think that it's the most daunting and the most difficult thing to do, but actually when it comes to communication, when you're talking about the other listener receiving that information, doing it in shorter period of time is the most effective. So that is the origin, a little bit of the origin on why you have your 3-minute, your 5-minute, or your elevator pitches, yeah? So again, I'm going to go a little bit into how we look at social media usage when we talk about science communication. So we are going beyond the classroom here. And I was particularly amazed and I wanted to share this piece of information with all of you. In fact, this is the latest data on in July 2020. The data for 2021 has not been collated yet. Yeah, if you look at this yellow box right here, you would see that there are 3.96 billion social media users. I'm not talking about one single channel. You have your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, YouTube, whatnot, everything incorporated, 3.96 billion users. On the other hand, right here, it states that 99% of these users use their social media via their phone. So what does this mean to you? Everybody is using their phone most of the time and are on social media. And for the past year of being, I think most parts of the world were in this pandemic situation. And a lot of them are resorted to using things or using their gadgets or moving online. I would say that is one of the contributing factors for such a large number of users who are using social media, different platforms of social media online. And further data says that out of this 3.96 billion, you have 26 million of them in Malaysia alone, as per January 2020 last year. And like what I mentioned earlier, what I mean by social media, it does not only mean Facebook or Instagram are the normal ones. You have things like Vimeo, you have things like your blogs, you have things like your YouTube. And over time, you would see that a lot of scientists, I would say, have resorted to the usage of these platforms to share about things in the lab, to share about their PhD projects, to share about their master's projects. Yeah, for you to do that, it is very, very possible. In fact, I would share a personal story of mine that in last year, me and a few of my friends, a few of my colleagues, started a Facebook group called Sembang Science. If you would have scanned my socials again in the first slide, which I would show you in the end, the last slide as well, you would get a link to that group, that Facebook group that we started. We started that group because all of us were educators in the university, and we had a passion to disseminate science, to talk about science, because I saw a gap here. A lot of people were at home, and people being at home were on their phone most of the time. Why not use this opportunity to talk about science in something that people understand? So if you look at some of the posts that we have written, or some of the posts that you could potentially do after this, you would understand what I'm trying to say. With this, few questions you need to ask yourself. Like in previous sessions, I did talk about how we would start up a Facebook group, or how we would start up a channel on social media to talk about science. And some of the things that you could ask yourself is, what are the type of content you would want to create? Again, who is your target audience? Why are you doing this? And how much time are you willing to spend? I do realize and acknowledge sometimes writing can take up a little bit of your time. Hence, what I always tell my students, in fact, is to write about, for example, your FYP project. Write about it in an essay or a short snippet and put a picture and put it on your social media. Why? Because your social media has perhaps your parents, your family, your cousins, your friends who are in the same background and who are not in the same background. And what better way to share with the world what you have done in the lab? For example, I could give you a very small example. I'm a biotechnologist, so allow me to give a biology or a chemistry-based example. If I were to streak a bacteria on a plate, and the bacteria had really, really beautiful colonies for that day, a beautiful plate, a beautiful picture of bacteria, I would put it on social media and I would say, growing E. coli for the first time, using E. coli to treat wastewater in rivers in Perak. Look at how pretty the bacteria are. And you could put a picture of your Petri dish there. And when you share it, a lot of your friends are going to ask you, oh, Ali or Abu, what is that? Or, oh, Sarah, what is that? How did you make this bacteria? And then you can go on telling your friends about it. What you are secretly doing there is you're disseminating science. You're telling your friends what you're doing in the lab. It could be as simple as even what bacteria it is, but you're getting people interested in science. You're getting people interested in your work. And sometimes it's just this small, it's true, this small acts that you do, is that where people get the most interested and most excited about what you do. And the platform that I used to set up what I was intending to do was Facebook. And this is a little bit of statistics that I would like to share as well. Facebook is the biggest social media site around, with 2 billion people using it every month. I'm sure for the past 3 or 4 months, this data is not accurate to these today. It is backdated to about 3 or 4 months ago. This data has definitely increased as we speak right now. And that number is almost a third of the world's population. So you can imagine how many people are on Facebook. So this is the group that we have started. It is called Sembang Science. If you read the word Sembang, it's a Malay word called, it translates to chat. So it's just a random chat. It's a very laid back chat, yeah? And science, it's science. The reason we put two words here, the English and the PM one, is just to show that our group talks about things that are in English and also in Bahasa Melayu. And I would just like to share some of the posts that are on this group. Again, this could be used in your field, in your own capacity to talk about your FYP project, to talk about the little experiment that you did at home, or to talk about your master's project, to talk about what you read, or it even could be something as simple as if you're preparing a literature review and you read an article which you find so interesting and you think that the article has a very valid point that you need to share. Put it on Facebook. Talk about the article. Talk about how Chen et al. 2020 has reviewed a paper on the current wastewater treatment in the world, and they have found that blah, 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 blah. Put it on Facebook, right? Put it on Facebook. Let people be aware of it. Let people understand what you're doing. And I guarantee you that people are going to start asking you questions about it. And if no one does, it's okay. It's okay if no one likes your post. I did have people coming up to say to me that, oh, I put on my post for 2 months and not even one person liked it. Not even one person comment, not even one person shared. It's okay, because I did speak to that person after 1 year, and that person now is completing his PhD. And she tells me that she is now running a blog because people got so interested in palm oil research and in wastewater and palm oil research on how she uses palm oil fronds to treat wastewater. And now she runs a blog. So she reached out to say that simple act got people interested months later to read her research. And now she has a huge number of readers or followers who was reading her work. Yeah. So one thing, a small snippets that you could do. We write things which are very short, because I do also realize that sometimes reading can be a little bit boring and dry and dull. So I tend to keep it very short. And some of the tricks that you could use is make it relatable, personalize your post, make it witty. So this is a story behind this picture of me holding a bunch of paku pakis here. So me, being not familiar with paku pakis, only found out about what paku pakis is in 2020. So this paku pakis is a type of edible fern, F-E-R-N, that is local to Malaysia and other parts of Indonesia and Borneo and Sumatra as well, where it grows at the near riverbanks, right? So I was not aware that we are able to eat this fern until my visit to Belum rainforest in 2020. When I went there, the ranger told me that you can eat this paku pakis and he will cook it for me for dinner. And when he did, I was so amazed by the taste because he cooked it with belacan, a dried shrimp paste, and it was so delicious that I found paku pakis to be my first love. That's why I took a picture of it like that, because I was so happy that I found my recent favorite vegetable. So I wrote about paku pakis. I read a little bit about it. I found that they have so many nutritional benefits that comes with eating paku pakis. So I put a picture of me hugging a paku pakis, and then I wrote about in Bahasa Melayu the benefits and where does paku pakis grow, where can one find paku pakis. And this post, if you can see right here, gathered a 6.7 thousand reach just by putting a picture and writing a little bit about paku pakis, and of course including references. When you write something in science, you have to be accountable for what you write, and as scientists you have to make sure what you write is credible. How you would do that is, we know how to search for sources like journals. We know how to search for credible sources, like we know things like WebMD or AskDoctor.com is not a reliable source. What you would do is go to the source of the journal, read the journal, digest the journal, take what the points the journal or the author means. And there's also ways that we all know how to find predatory journals and non-predatory journals, and always to look for good journals. We all know that, and we are taught as scientists, as students, how to look for good journals. So always make sure the piece of information that you write is a credible source. Another example is, I recently found this little annoying bugs in my pot of rice. And upon research, I found that this little annoying bug is in fact called the kutu beras. And I went up to my textbooks, my old biology textbooks, read about the life cycle. We did study about it in biotechnology back when I was doing my degree, recalled what I studied, and wrote about how on what is kutu beras and how does kutu beras reproduce and why you always find so much of kutu beras, or in English, it's called a grain weevil, in your pot of rice. And this post reached 16,000 people reaching out to it, right? Another example is another colleague of mine, who is a physicist who also writes for the book, took a trip to Tanjung Tualang. And in Tanjung Tualang, we do find a tin dredge, a Malay kapal korek, and it's the only kapal korek left in the world. And in Perak, they have preserved this kapal korek in its exact form. So it was so nice to see a large kapal korek. She took pictures of it, and because she's a physicist, she wrote about the mechanism of how this the dredge works on the metal and the matter that is used to the alloys or the aluminiums that is used in the building of a kapal korek. And also, you may ask me, if I start a group or if I start a page, I cannot be writing all the time because I don't have all the time in the world. I need to study, I need to go for classes, I have my obligations to my family, I'm a daughter, I need to help my mother, I'm a son, I need to do this, yes, all of that happens because life happens, and life happens to everyone. So what you need to do when you have a group or a page, or you want something like this, is try to outsource things like this, or ask friends who are interested. So if you look at this picture right here, I have a friend who is a botanist, who is a lecturer at the university as well, and she sings to her plants daily, and she writes how her long beans have grown, have flourished over a period of time, and she writes about how we can start our own home garden. And I invited her to take a video to talk about how she sings to her plants and how she applies her own fertilizers, her own compost, how she mends and tends and cares for her plants or her little garden at home. So you can do this. And by this, I have learned so much, because I have a chemist, I have a botanist, I have a physicist writing, and all of them putting things in the group. And now that the group has grown to a fair bit of amount of people, I would say, I have people who have also interested in contributing to the group, and we allow things like this. And when I read, I learn a lot from them also. They write about things which are in their field. If you look at the group, you have things, even a nutritionist who wrote about how her fats cry whenever she exercises, and how sweat translates to the calories that are burned. So we have things like this going on. So I would definitely invite you, any of you who would want to write this is not something that I am publicizing for my own group. There's so many other groups out there on Facebook. If you're interested to contribute in any of the groups, please always feel free to contact the admin and to send in your post. And I'm sure they would allow, or they would be very happy to get things or matters or pieces like this from all of you, yeah? So again, what's in it for me? Why I need to do this? Coming back, we're slowly going into the end of the session where we talk about, why am I doing this? Why is it so important? As what Anne Rowe mentioned just now, it is our obligation. She said the word obligation. Look at the fun part of doing this. We can be able to share our journey, and we can be able to narrate. For example, my friend who went to that kapal korek, that tin dredge, her little trip about where she went. By this, we can listen to stories. We can read stories. In a way, you're humanizing science. This is a really nice term, humanizing science. Humanizing science it means to put a human element to it. It also is known as to make it relatable. As what I mentioned, how you would start your presentation, talk about the climate, talk about how hot or how cold the weather is nowadays, talk about how rain is acidic, talk about how crops are dying, talk about pollution, talk about things that matter, talk about things that are relatable and things that everyone knows. And then again, reel them in towards that with that opening factor to your research to make them understand that you care about a bigger picture. And this is what I am doing to contribute to a bigger picture that you know. So let me share with you my research on what am I doing. Another thing that is very interesting that people sometimes don't realize is when you put things online, when you put things on Facebook or whatever social media, I'm not saying that Facebook is the best. You can use Instagram, Twitter, anything like that that your heart pleases. Anything you would want to use, when you put it online and when people read, when people follow, when you continually do that, I have evidences of people writing up to me to ask me to be examiner for, oh, I have this student, blah, blah, blah. Could you be an examiner? Would you be interested to give talks? Would you be interested to come and share with my students on how you do this? Or even my own student, when I ask them to put things out, they ask like, oh, can I read your latest publications? Things like this, small things like this. And you do get opportunities like this when you maintain a social media presence or when you start having a social media presence. Right, so to sum it all up, or what I've went through at least for about 15 minutes, I would say, is to start today, I give you this challenge, all of you, or 68 of you today, to write a post on any social media platforms that you have and talk about your final year project in a very simple manner, or put a picture, or talk about how excited are you to, you could start with something like, can't wait to present my final year thesis, or sorry, my 5-minute presentation on December, where I will talk about important factors to clean up rivers in Malaysia. But your project could be something about distillation or fractionation for wastewater. Always focus on the bigger picture to reel people in, right? So you talk like this, put up something like that on your socials. Remember, you're never in competitions with anyone. When I started my group, just share with you a little story. When I started my group, we had like only 2 or 3 members in that group. And we all thought that, oh, it's just going to be a dead end and nobody's going to want to read. Who are we? Who am I? Nobody knows who am I. Nobody wants to read whatever I'm putting out there, because how am I supposed to get people to listen to me and want to read what it's in my group? And then after time, but we continue to put on matter, we continue to put in material in that group. And after a while, things picked up. So please do not be discouraged if you start with very little or nobody likes your post or nobody share it or nobody commented. It is fine. It only takes the first step for you to start and keep on doing it. And eventually, I guarantee you that eventually things would pick up and things would go on better. So yeah, this is just something that I want to share, because I keep on saying that I guarantee. Just want to show you that it does actually, things like this do happen, because after a year of me putting things up, it even goes to the other of my colleagues. And this is just a little bit of what are things that, all the fun things that I'll be able to do, all the fun people that I've been able to meet over time and speak to over time, the things that I've been writing, people I've been talking, interviewers, journalists and everything. It's all because of what that I was afraid to do last time. I was afraid, I was nervous that nobody's going to read it. I even got criticism from my colleagues, in fact, not my colleagues, from my friends around me, saying that you are watering science down. You are taking out the important things that we scientists need to talk about. You are not giving justice to science. How can you say just plain words for science? You need to be specific. But I went around asking her, who reads, how many people reads the journals that you publish? How many people read the journal? Oh yeah, other people who do research that are similar to yours read it. But what impact have you given to the world putting out journals like this? Does your neighbor know about what you're doing? Does your mother know about what you're doing? Wouldn't you want to share the information so that people can talk about it, people can understand, people can know what you're doing? And that is important for us to deliver a nation which is well educated, deliver a nation which is well informed about decisions. And you can see how important it is to be informed about decisions, especially now when vaccines are so important. We hear about things about people who are so against vaccines. We hear about people who support vaccines. And I hope you can understand now how important science is and how important is it for us to be informed about correct information, about the right choice of information, about the right things to do, right? So this is just a little bit that I wanted to share about where this social media presence has gotten me. So yeah, so that is how you make your science talk. So thank you again, everybody. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have. Thanks again for the organizers for giving me this chance to speak to all of you today. All the best for your 5-minute presentation in December. I am very sure that the other two speakers and the other trainers on that day are going to give you wonderful information to further mold and further put together your presentations. So you'll be amazing on that day. Thank you, everybody. And I'll be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magaret, for such wonderful presentations. I do believe all participants has learned some things and benefit from it. Is there any question from participants? You can unmute mic and start asking, or else you can also type your question at the chat space.
Hello, can you hear? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for your lovely presentation. I really like your presentation. I just have one thought. When you were at the lowest of your condition, when someone criticizes you, right? So how do you organize your thought to be confident to face that challenge, you know?
Okay. Who am I speaking to? I'm sorry, I didn't get your name on my screen.
Oh, sorry, I'm Waida.
Wahida. Okay. Thank you, Wahida. Thank you again for that question. In fact, that question is a very challenging and a very difficult one for me to answer, I might say. So thank you for kind of challenging me to give you this answer a little bit. But yes, when you, as I mentioned earlier, when I started off this group, or even when I started off this journey as to dwell in a little bit of science communication, I did have people tell to me that, oh, you're not a science communicator, right? Science communicator. So what gives you the credentials to come online and talk about science communication? So I went on saying that science communication is like any form of communication. It is just how effective you put it, how effective is the audience be able to understand what you're trying to say. And also when I started my group, I did have a lot of hate mail actually, anonymous hate mail, really hate, H-A-T-E mail, that states that, oh, you're not doing science justice. And they said that you're watering down science words. How could you as a scientist, some even went on to say that I was placed on the periodic table in 2019. Some even went on to say that you as a person who's on the periodic table talk about things as in such a simple manner. And I went on saying that. And what I did was I did send in all the comments that I received from the readers of my groups. And the comments that I received from the readers of my group really warms my heart, because I did have a mother who is anonymous. I don't know her. She's a reader. She told me that the stories that we write on our group are the stories that she reads to her children before bedtime. And that really warmed my heart, because I'm so happy that she chose to read science-based stories to her children. Of course, the pieces that we write are very simple and very easy to understand. And we went on receiving information like, thank you, I read this before I fall asleep, or before I go to bed, sorry. And this makes my day. We did get a lot of comments. So what I did was at one point, I do admit I got a little bit offended. I screenshot whatever that person sent me, and I sent that person who sent an hate mail to me. I said that this is what I strive for. This is why I do what I do. And after that, that person stopped criticizing and stopped sending hate chats into the group. I do also understand that it can be really demotivating In fact, it made me want to stop doing what I do. In fact, sometimes when life passes by and there's so many things in the world to do, and writing is so difficult sometimes because not only you need to write, you need to research about what you're writing, because credibility and accountability of what you're writing is really important. So when I write, I read first journals, I read, make sure they're credible journals, and then I write. I do realize it takes a lot of time. But what I do is I live for the comments that these people send me. And these people are anonymous people like your random machi and pachi who have no clue about science, you know. We wrote things about like what is tapai that day. Pembuatan tapai in Malay, sorry, in English, it's tapai is fermented rice, which is wrapped in a leaf, and it's a snack and dessert that is famous in Malaysia. And this makcik said that, oh, you know, allow me to speak in Malay. Selama ini makcik buat tapai, tak pernah pun nak tahu sains, ada sains, you know. And then that made me so happy because this random makcik literally just said that to me, and I was like, oh, terima kasih makcik. This makcik said in English. All the while I've been making this, but I didn't know there is science behind this. Thank you for telling me. And when I searched her profile, she was a really old machi, a really old lady. And I was like, oh, that is important. That is me delivering science. So to answer your question, yes, I do feel more demotivated, do feel very low, but I tend to be optimistic, and I always reread comments. You know, I tend to look at the bright side of things and reread all the positive things that people say, and that makes me smile. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really understand right now. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, any other question from the floor? No questions? You also can type at the chat session if you have any question to Dr. Magaret. All right. If there's no questions, okay. First of all, I would like to ask all the participants to open your camera because I want to take the photo sessions. Please all. Now I can see all of you. All right. Hold on. So we have few page here. So I will snack page by page. All right. Next page. Please smile. Okay, I think some of you do not open the camera. Please, for page 3. Oh, the line is not okay. Okay, I think some of you said that the camera is not working. I think that's all. But before we end our session, I would like to give the attendance form as well as the feedback form. Wait a minute. I will provide at the chat. Okay. First is the feedback form. Hopefully you can find the links. First for feedback forms. Next for the attendance. Oh, it's together with set attendance. So I need only to share one. Okay. So only one, we already combined the form. So just fill in this one form, the feedback form, as well as the form we combine together. Okay, anybody have a difficulty to find the link? Hopefully all can fill in the form. All right.
Dr.
Yes.
Osman, may I interrupt you for a while?
Okay.
Okay, I just want to say that to all the participants, whether you are student or supervisor, please fill up this attendance form and give your feedback. This is very much important for us to understand how useful this session was and what exactly you are looking forward in the upcoming workshops as well. So this is for our improvement as well as for your betterment. So please give, nobody should miss the chance to fill up the feedback form. And this attendance is also very much important so that we know that who has been present in today's session and who has not attended, because there are much more participants than who are present right now. Some of them, they couldn't make it. We received the personal notifications. So that's why it's important for us. So please don't miss it out. And I think Dr. Osman, you have something after this as well, so that nobody leaves the session, right? So I think you should just announce them before they think that the session is over. So I hand over back the session to you.
Okay. So hopefully, as mentioned by Dr. Haroon, hopefully you can fill the attendance forms, because we want to know your feedbacks. And I think we have another 3 sessions, okay, for our workshop. So please don't miss our next grooming sessions, because we have other distinguished speaker to share their knowledge to you in order to prepare you for the competitions. All right. All right. If you have already filled in the form, so I think we end our session for today. Thank you very much again, Dr. Magaret, for your such wonderful presentation. I think everybody will very happy to listen to your talk, and we gain something interesting from the talk as well. So